How can a war redraw the map of global power in just 40 days? Well, that's what we're digging into today. We're breaking down the 2026 US-Iran war, a conflict that kicked off with a flash and ended in a full-blown global crisis.
You know, the start of the war was described with this one incredibly dramatic phrase, a spectacular decapitation. This tells you everything. This wasn't just about random strikes. It was a calculated, surgical attempt to just dismantle an entire government right from the air.
And that was the moment it all started. The night sky over Tehran didn't just light up, it exploded. And for the next 40 days, a war would rage that sent shockwaves across the entire planet. So, how on earth did we get to this point? To really understand the war, you've got to rewind the clock. This fire didn't just start with a single spark. It was more like a slow burn that suddenly and violently erupted. When you look at this timeline, it's like watching a series of dominoes fall, one right after the other. First, diplomacy completely fails. Then Iran's nuclear program kicks into high gear. And the final domino? A really brutal internal crackdown that, for all intents and purposes, provided the justification for military intervention. Okay, so let's get into the conflict itself. We're going to see how this thing unfolded with just stunning speed and intensity. The world basically had a front row seat to modern warfare being unleashed on a scale we've rarely seen. So the campaign had two different names, but it shared a single devastating set of goals. First, completely neutralize Iran's nuclear program. Second, absolutely cripple its naval power. And third, take out its senior leadership. And this table just brilliantly illustrates the sheer ferocity of the campaign. I mean, we are talking about over 23,000 combined strikes in just 40 days. Just look at these numbers. Iran's entire submarine fleet, gone. The vast majority of its naval power, completely erased. This was a systematic dismantling of a nation's military machine. But, and this is important, Iran did not just absorb these attacks. It retaliated. It launched its own missiles at Israel and at U.S. allies all across the Gulf. And then it made a really crucial strategic move. It basically weaponized geography by seizing control of the Strait of Hormuz, that vital artery for global oil, and started charging tolls in Chinese yuan. You know, behind all of those military statistics, there's an immense human cost. These weren't just military targets. The strikes hit thousands of homes, dozens of schools, and medical centers. And just a heartbreaking percentage of the casualties were children. And the war also erased history. We're talking about legally protected cultural sites, monuments that had stood for centuries, just turned into rubble. That's a loss you can never, ever recover. You might think a conflict like this would be contained to the Middle East, right? Nope, its economic impact was felt instantly and painfully in markets all around the world. So first, let's look at the direct cost to the United States. A staggering $200 billion in new military funding was requested. And that wasn't just for the war itself, but to manage the incredibly volatile aftermath and instability it created. And what about the financial blow to the region itself? Well, in just 1 month, nearly $200 billion in economic damage was inflicted on neighboring Arab countries, crippling their economies and trade. And finally, you saw immediate panic in the markets. $120 billion of value just vanished from the Dubai and Abu Dhabi stock exchanges. Investor confidence completely evaporated in the face of a regional war. The key takeaway here is simple, but it's really profound. By seizing the Strait of Hormuz, a militarily battered Iran proved it could still hold the entire global economy hostage, triggering a worldwide crisis. All right, so now let's see how this absolutely brutal war transitioned into an incredibly tense diplomatic battle for what comes next. So after 40 days, the bombing stopped. With Pakistan mediating, a very fragile truce was called. And this paved the way for the first high-level, in-person talks between the U.S. and Iran since 1979, all set to happen in Islamabad. But the two sides showed up with completely opposed visions for peace. The U.S. plan was basically a demand for total surrender. Iran's plan demanded a total reversal of U.S. policy. And what's crucial is that it was Iran's 10-point plan that actually formed the basis for the negotiations. So where does all this leave us? The bombing has stopped, sure, but the conflict is far from over. A new, much more uncertain reality has emerged. Now, from a purely military perspective, the sources we have call Operation Epic Fury a capital V victory for the U.S. and Israel. They achieved their short-term objectives with brutal, undeniable efficiency.
But, and this is a huge but, that tactical win came at a massive strategic cost. The war proved that a nation can be decimated on the battlefield and still have the power to bring the global economy to its knees.
And this leaves us with the ultimate question. Was the 40-day war worth it? A spectacular military victory was achieved for sure, but it may have created a far more unstable and unpredictable world. And that is a question everyone is still trying to answer.